In what was a 126-104 loss at home to the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Pacers zoned out, not only as it pertains to being stymied by zone, but also with respect to their lack of concentration on the glass and in the details, as they never led and trailed by as many as 26 points. Here to talk about Game 3 is more or less the convergence of all the most prominent lingering concerns about this team from the regular season is Samson Folk, no longer undefeated in his role as front-running freelancer.
It's a hard loss, obviously, but even worse still because of it calls into question my cosmic powers to, allow the team I write for to win. Because my very first season covering the Raptors, they won the title. I don't know if you know this, and I was
You've
this.
told me a few times.
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, I'm not front running anymore. We are. What is the the antonym of front runner? Back runner? I don't know. That's anyway.
Back
We
jogger.
back jog or something like that. And the good news, I'll start off positive because I think probably like the podcast that came out night of is the cathartic, like we're angry, we're pissed, dude. So I'll go positive. The reason why, if you're the Pacers, you steal games is because you're going to get punched in the mouth at some point when this Cavs team comes back healthy. Their starters were unbelievable. The Pacers have a lot to contend with now, and they get to start basically from like 2-0. Now we're looking at it's us versus the Cavs. They get to start figuring things out, and they do it with a lead. It's a lot to figure out. They're a 64-win team. They're a tremendous basketball team, but they stole a game at least. They put themselves up. Now you got to get to work. You really got to start crafting some responses and some fixes for what they failed at. Maybe most notably, you mentioned it, the zone. I long-winded, but yeah, it was trouble. It was trouble.
Very briefly, Darius Garland clearly not close to 100% by my eye in that game.
No.
However, that
Under the
pass
rim
that he
passing.
made under the basket, after one of, just a few offensive rebounds, gets it on the perimeter, drives against Thomas Bryant, Pascal Siakam sinking in, preparing to peel. Andrew Nemhard, the person playing in between the shooter and the big under the basket, and somehow still finds that passing avenue. This is
He's a
why,
wizard.
after game one, I was like, if you're going to maintain that same defensive scheme, it's going to be a bit more problematic with Darius Garland back in the lineup. But he wasn't really the person giving them the main damage in this game, especially while he was also battling foul trouble aside from that tremendous highlight. As you referenced, the place where I want to start first, hence, the name, the title of this podcast, Pacers Zone Out. You and I talked about zone quite a bit in the preview.
We did.
We did not talk about this zone in the preview.
We
To get
didn't.
to give everybody some numbers, the second quarter, abysmal for the Pacers, outscored 34-13, 0 of 11 from 3, 5 of 22 from the field. That was when they first started really seeing the zone. And to be frank, like they missed, I think, 4 threes in a row prior to when the Cavs went zone. And while I was watching that, I was like, I don't think these attempts are bad. The process is fine. Like Aaron Nesmith missing an open transition 3, fine. He gets a catch and shoot 3 in the corner out of Miles Turner, kind of in a blitz situation out of a pick, pinging it to him there, fine. Turner missed a pick and pop 3 that was wide open with Darius Garland in rotation as the indirect closeout, fine. Then Nemhard picks up that retaliation foul against Max Strus, and then came the zone. Obi missed the first 3 against the zone, and it was kind of downhill from there. So for the game, Second Spectrum / Genius Sports, whatever we want to call our stats overlords these days, say that the Pacers had 23 zone possessions that they faced in this game, scoring 0.696 points per possession against it. Kenny Atkinson, after the game, said that they switched from the 2-3 that you and Evan and I covered to playing the 3-2 because he felt that that was going to be more effective against the Pacers playing 5 out. I think that there was probably some even more motivations for that, besides just the fact that the Pacers tend to play 5 out. The Pacers shot 0 of 9, specifically against the zone, 1 turnover. And here's the 2 big stats. Siakam, 1 field goal attempt against the zone, which was a 3-pointer. So nothing in the paint, nothing at the basket. Tyrese Haliburton attempted 0 shots against the zone. That, quite frankly, cannot happen. So I've divided all of this zone stuff up into 3 sections of stuff that I noticed, but broad strokes, 20,000 foot view. Your thoughts of watching the Indiana Pacers for probably, I would say, the 3rd to 4th time, really coming out of a game at the wrong end, largely because they couldn't muster points against the zone defense.
So I know you have a closer eye on this stuff, but it was in my piece. We were simultaneously, I think, mind melding. Why not put Mobley in some movement up top? Because you and I on a podcast about the Pacers, and Paul George hasn't been there for a long time, but we marvel at his ability to move and slither at his size. Mobley does not have that. If you're going to put like that's such a common basketball ethic, is that if a big is way out beyond the basket, it's like see how they move and navigate. And I think that the Pacers probably missed an opportunity to put them in more of that mixer. Put him in more of that mixer. That was like a big thing that I noticed. And when they did screen the top of the zone, they got an opportunity where like the ball goes to Nemhard, and he really gets to play with Allen in the cat and mouse game of Bryant rolling, and I think it was Mathurin in the weak side corner. It's like suddenly Allen, because they screen the top, is responsible for like 44 feet of court.
Yep.
And you just shifted the floor and you created this big wide opportunity. And you have to like Donovan, we talked about like the zone protects the guards to some degree, and it puts you in a position. It's like, okay, let's start to try and manipulate the bigs. And even when they got like Tyrese's assist out of the zone was when he goes to the weak side corner. He pulls Allen with him out of the bottom. Then Nesmith follows to keep Allen there. Then Haliburton comes up, gets the ball. They run a screen and roll on Donovan Mitchell with Pascal. He slips middle, catches. Mathurin comes at the 45, drop off, and one. It's like you have to be really mindful of how you move and shape these bigs in that Cavs defense. And I thought they didn't do a very good job of that. And I think like the shooting will come. It won't be 0 of 9 forever. It could have swung a little bit better. But the crux of what they need to be doing, I think, is shifting and moving those bigs and really thinking about that and how they can make that happen in game 4 when they inevitably see a zone that vexed them and perplexed them and zoned them out in game 3.
Because I should have pointed out, too, I do agree. Like, I don't think you're going to shoot all of 11 in very many quarters. Probably not all of 9 all the time. However, 66% of the 9 threes against the zone were heavily contested. These weren't exactly like rhythm threes. A lot of times it was more so bailout threes after the ball had kind of spasmodically moved around the perimeter. So
spasmodically. Excellent. I'll just say excellent.
So you and I are on the same page with regards to Mobley and being at the top. So that's the first section that I kind of want to look at things that I thought were somewhat problematic when we're looking at this. And just to provide an overview, like I said, when Samson and I talked and previewed, like, hey, the Cavs slowed the Pacers down in the second game of the mini-series with 2-3 zone, we also pointed out that the time that Tyrese Haliburton didn't play in that game. But it did remove Pascal Siakam from the offense. As I noted, Kenny Atkinson said they wanted to play the 3-2 to combat the 5 out, and likely accounting for the fact that Tyrese would be playing in this game. However, in game 1, the Pacers did see that the Cavs were going to play a 3-2. They played a very small handful of possessions against 3-2 with Hunter at the top and Mobley at the bottom. And it was pretty similar to what we ended up seeing in game 3, and that rather than trying to, screen some of the top, they just tried to shoot over the length of DeAndre Hunter at the top without the ball really touching the paint. So now to present day, this is what Samson and I are getting at, that like a lot of the possessions when you run these back, it's just Miles Turner in the middle of the zone. Nothing really going on at the top to help create a gap for Tyrese to get into. Not forcing. Mobley's a big body that's going to make those passing angles more difficult, but he should also be a big target because it's like what you and I have talked about with Pascal Siakam as a screen navigator. It's hard for those guys, or like Giannis, to be able to get up over the top. More often than not, they're either going to have to go under, or it's going to be laborious enough that maybe the other top zone defender has to pinch up to help, and then you're at least getting a more rhythm shot for Nesmith or Mathurin or whoever ends up flanking Tyrese. But instead, to me, my biggest critique would be that too much of the time, this ended up being Miles Turner trying to manipulate a fairly static zone defense from the middle when Miles had a good game last night overall. his energy and effort. He was somebody who got hobbled on whatever the injury exactly was and finished a layup and got a block while no one seemed ready or willing to take a foul. Those types of things happened. He does many things well. I don't think that near the top of the list would be quarterbacking the middle of the zone and manipulating it to get people to move in the way that somebody like, Jokic, Sabonis, those types of bigs can do if you're not going to have a lot of motion and movement around it. And the other difference being is when we previewed the 2-3, Mobley was playing in the middle and he was hanging back. So if you were feeding Miles Turner there, he was just getting wide open, catch and shoot twos. That's different than when they're clearly pinching in at the high post and he's having to do something or create. I don't think that this is ideal, and I probably wouldn't be looking to go back to this a whole lot if they see this a lot on Sunday in game 4, because again, like Tyrese is just, I guess you feed it into Miles against Max Strus, but Jarrett Allen's right there. You haven't made him, as you said, have to cover the 30 feet of ground that he could potentially have to cover if you looked at this in a different way. This is actually a man set that they run. They call it sideline. So Tyrese will pass it off to the guard there at the left, and then he'll come back off of that flare screen. And at the same time, they cut the flare, hence why Obi Toppin's going from the wing to the opposite corner. The Cavs basically just sat on that. I mean, Donovan Mitchell's already up waiting for Tyrese to come off of it. So you're almost ending up in the same exact place you were on the prior 2 possessions that I just ran, where, again, you're expecting Miles Turner to make a play. And, why he isn't automatically facing the basket, I don't entirely know. And also, why isn't Obi Toppin crashing? Darius Garland is guarding both Ben Shepherd and Obi Toppin. Obi ended up taking more shots against this zone than anybody. And to me, that could be a lot easier look if he just crashes into that gap rather than more of the,
to that
9 for
point,
threes.
That point quickly as well. It's not even a zone play, but it's just for people who are watching this. And I know some people get, introduced to some basketball stuff. Here's a really basic principle is like when a guy is covering 2, one guy has to cut. Ben Shepherd was there and he could have been wide open from 3, or Toppin could have been open on that cut there. But Ben Shepherd's 1-3 last night, what happened? It was in pseudo transition, and Pascal cut the transition defender right to the bucket, and Ben was wide open. It's you have to be really, really proactive about how you move and change the shape of the defense in any, whether it's a zone. I know people think of pulling and teasing a zone, but just always, man, always.
And this is the one that they ran against the Bucks, where if you're going to flare Tyrese, having Siakam come up and flare for the ball, that cues it. Give it to Tyrese. If this is a 3-2 and the player has to commit to Tyrese coming off of that flare, and then you get Siakam on the flare slip, there's only going to be one big when Siakam catches it in that spot. At that point in time, either the big's staying back and taking Miles Turner potentially at the block, and Siakam's getting a wide open shot, or then in the reverse, if you take Siakam, then it should be an easy lay down to Miles Turner. They didn't go to this action at all last night, which I found a little bit strange. That's a 2-3, but it should be just as effective. And this is where, when we're saying to screen Mobley, this is why. This is the Atlanta Hawks playing against the 3-2 that the Cavs played under JB Bickerstaff, which isn't identical to what they were doing last night, because back then they would slide Mobley from a 3-2 into a 2-3 on baseline penetration so that they could constantly have him as a secondary rim protector. But right away, the Hawks have Clint Capella screen Mobley at the top for Trae Young to be able to dribble off of that. And not only does Clint Capella screen the top, he's diving and actually having forward momentum to the rim, which is a key to this. Because too often last night when they were screening it, it was like you have to roll or you have to slip. You can't just set the screen and then stand there. It's not reshaping the defense at all. But then you can see the struggles that Mobley can have in those screen navigation settings where, yes, it's a 3, but that's an easy pull-up that Tyrese should have readily been able to access. So they finally did go to that in the third quarter. TJ McConnell's the ball handler, and they're screening the middle guy with Thomas Bryant. Obviously, the middle guy is going to go under when it's TJ, but still, you can see Thomas Bryant dive, Andrew Nembhard finding him there. And then, like you're talking about, look at how much ground Allen's going to have to cover, because the other aspect of this is somebody has to tag Thomas Bryant when he's moving to the rim in a 3-2. If it's Allen, then you're also, the skip pass was wide open for Andrew to make to Benedict Mathurin as well. I didn't really understand why that attack point took them so long to get to, given the personnel that they have. That to me was the first obvious one, is that force, rather than getting to sit in the zone, force the bigs to have to move in the zone.
Yes. It's also, there's like, we talked about, or you talked about Turner at the front end. That is what the Cavs want. If the Cavs can move so much of the offense into Turner's hands, especially when Turner is, a lot of it, he has his back to
Yep.
the rim a lot of times. It's, a lot of people think like the dangerous zone big is the one who can make that push shot. And because we've seen, bigs who don't really have that struggle in the playoffs. I get it. But the most dangerous zone big is the one who is comfortable with a live dribble in a collapsing area to make reads, which is why Pascal is a more natural choice for that flare action that you're talking about. And also, like you talked about, not only did Trey hit the shot that Tyrese won game 2 on, Tyrese can definitely hit that shot if Mobley is having trouble navigating, but also like Capella moving with that momentum. The Pacers had 2 turnovers on that dive pass last night, just
Yep.
off of Tyrese. And at least that's something I know will be better next game. Like Tyrese will respond to that, and like he won't have turnovers off that. At least I doubt it. Like it will hit Miles a little bit better, but also Miles like meeting the ball and Miles constantly like turning his back and like backpedaling to catch balls is like, there's small stuff that can get cleaned up that might create a little bit more like zip on these actions. But also, as you point out, it's like it looks like there's a zone buster here that might give you some traction. Let's see if that works.
And it was kind of curious that Tyrese had those turnovers in the way that he did. I mean, against the man as well, because so
Yep.
much of the time he wants to play through the skip pass. Like he typically looks perimeter and then glances inside, which
Mm-hmm.
is the reverse of what most guards do, which is what makes his jump passing as effective as it is, because he always eyes out and then inward, which sometimes opens the inward pass, but he wasn't reading the tagger particularly
He
well
had
on those
trouble.
particular actions.
Yep.
If not Mobley at the top, then why not Allen at the bottom? So something else that I would have liked, which would have been pretty easy to flow into right here. Like if you pretend that Benedict Mathurin and Tyrese have swapped spots, or someone other than Benedict Mathurin is there at the wing, because I'm not sure if Ben could complete this particular pass. But if the ball gets reversed to Ben at the wing and Miles is flashing in that direction against a 3-2, the opposite high post guy is probably going to go to Miles. Meanwhile, if you're cutting Pascal Siakam baseline at the same time and he turns back and screens the outside of Jarrett Allen in a pin in, and Neesmith drifts to the corner behind
Mm-hmm.
that. So then the pass effectively is, if somebody else is standing in Benedict Mathurin's spot, a skip pass over the top of the zone to Aaron, basically in a pocket that you are creating. And the reason that I like that, and again, I know that they shot 0 of 9 of 3, but that's more of a rhythm 3 than what we're seeing right here from Benedict Mathurin, with you really can't get a closer contest than that,
Mm-hmm.
is because Jarrett Allen, when he's at the bottom of this zone, including, a couple years ago when they were playing Mobley, Markkanen, and Allen at the same time, like you're seeing here, here's a team that you cover, Samson, the Toronto Raptors, setting a pin in on Jarrett Allen. He doesn't navigate those well, and most bigs don't. But like I watched some of this zone over the summer because I was looking at just different zones because I was curious, like how effective could teams be who weren't good in man coverage be at zone coverage? Like, could it be a panacea of sorts? So I was looking at different things that teams run. I watched that Cleveland zone quite a bit, and those were the two main things that always stood out. Like, Mobley's not great at the top if you're actually using screening actions. Allen's not great at the bottom if you're screening the outside of the zone, especially in a 3-2, where then that guy at the top has way more ground to cover to get to the corner. So they never really looked at that either. Like, I mean, Allen wasn't having to move a lot, whether that was because you weren't setting the ball screen that was forcing him to have to tag, or you weren't actually forcing him to navigate a screen either.
It's one of the eternal things, is like as soon as, and maybe most importantly during like the era where Steph Curry kind of changed the geometry of the court, is that's why people thought like, oh, the big is dead, because they're like teams just keep moving bigs, or they just like obliterate the space that they leave while they hang around the rim. And the Pacers have the talent certainly to punish these things. You just have to like the will, the forethought, whatever it is. It just didn't happen. Also, just since we saw the Raptors in that clip, I did watch last night's game with Blake and a couple of his other friends. He delighted in the fact that I was no longer undefeated as a writer. He was the antagonist of last night.
I didn't get any details. He did tell me that he had bought a glove so the two of you could play catch in the park.
We did play catch. It was
Thought
great.
that was a very wholesome anecdote.
And it was like the snap of the glove. Pah! Whew. Pretty nice.
Now, I guess I should ask, have you been able to maintain your own glove? Because I know that your basketball got taken from you.
So I'm going back to Saskatchewan next month. However, and I'll get my baseball glove when I'm there, but I don't have a glove here, which is why you had to buy one. I have a basketball again because
Oh,
the patron saint of basketball, Josh Codanera, he gifted me a basketball when we went climbing on Thursday. He gave me a ball. So I immediately, as soon as I got home from climbing, I walked over to the courts and I just went and put up shots. Ooh-wee! Felt so good. It had been so long since I put up shots. So yeah. No more, but
how rusty were you after this many days off? It's been a while since you were playing in the Brody League where there was an official Samson stats page.
Terrible. This is the worst thing. The stats not accurate. All of us would go to check the stats at the end of the game. We'd just put, that's wrong, dude. But anyway, not rusty. I mean, it's like I wasn't playing against anyone. I was just getting shots up, and it's just getting shots up.
It's very nice that your friends just give you presents just cause. But back to zone defense. The third thing that I wanted to point out and run down here is that the Pacers did run some things. It wasn't all just Miles Turner freelance from the middle and try to make, Nikola Jokic plays
Miles
against them for
Jokic.
two. Yes, Miles Jokic, exactly. So some of the sets that we've looked at many times.
This reminds me quickly, I'll say, when the Raptors, when they were still the Nick Nurse, Pascal, OG, Scotty, Fred team, I remember they were getting absolutely flummoxed by zone. And Evan messages me, why don't they ever screen the top? It's like, why not cross screens? Why not try stuff? Because they just kept working through like a flare at the top and the corners almost exclusively. And he was so confused by the Raptors' lack
The
of
Nick Nurse,
ingenuity.
Nate Bjorkgren teams loved the slide play where you would cross to screen. It was a double flare, and then you were trying to create a hole for the guard to slide into. That was like the number one thing that both of those teams ran. But here
Obsessed
they
with
are screening the top against baseline, as we've pointed out many times. I felt it like sometimes it wasn't even necessarily the zone offense that was being run. It was more operator error. Like there can't be any lag. Like you immediately need to tear the hole in the zone and be getting downhill here. It took a little bit too much extra time, and then it just turns into more, like I said, of the spasmodic passing around the perimeter until you're just trying to create literally something out of nothing. There was a lot of driving into crowds eventually, which, yes, you want to put the ball on the floor against the zone, but after you've created a crease. This is the motion set that they put in after they blew the lead to the Bucks on New Year's Eve that they've run many times. They don't often put Siakam in the middle. This was an adjustment for him to be in the middle with Thomas Bryant rotating around the perimeter, and that is when they screened not Mobley, but the outside person at the top, set the ball screen, and Tyrese did make that pocket pass, and then Ben ends up cutting behind it. That was one of the more successful things that they did. The problem is that nothing that they did that was successful ever lasted very long. So like 2 possessions later, they go back to the exact same play again, and it seems as though there's confusion between Pascal and Thomas Bryant as to who is going to occupy what space. They don't really get into the action with any momentum. Broken play effectively until they finally do get to the ball screen, and then Tyrese tries to skip it, and it's another drive into a crowd, which the people on the Cavs bench were open in defense of Benedict Mathurin, if you want to put it that way. The other thing that they like to do, X is what they'll call this, so they'll cross paths, screening the inside of the zone to dig a tunnel for TJ to be able to shoot through that hole. And then, this is most likely going to lead to pull-up twos a lot of the time, but if Evan Mobley were to meet TJ higher while Miles is sliding along the baseline, then Ty Jerome's going to have to make a choice. Either he's sinking to Miles or he's taking Tyrese in the corner, which could have potentially created an open shot for Tyrese in the corner. As it was, TJ made the shot. That worked. Problem is that particular buster, so many teams, like Rick's been running that since he was coaching Luka in Dallas. The Jazz were running that when Donovan Mitchell still played for the Jazz. so many teams have replicated it that it typically doesn't work like maybe more than once. And here they tried to do it again, and the Cavs are like, okay, well, we're just going to squeeze that out. And then again, it's more on the perimeter, and then them just trying to, out of random, just flash in and out of the paint. The ball is getting thrown around very haphazardly, as if I'm watching like people throw a beach ball at a concert or something. That's what I felt like. So those were kind of the three things that I noticed. Number one, I'd like to see more screening of Evan Mobley. Number two, I'd like to see more screening of Jarrett Allen at the bottom. Number three, when they are going to the actions and the zone busters that they're used to running, for lack of better terms, they need to be run with more accuracy and purpose and intention. Yes. Than what we were seeing in this game. And that is what kind of applied to the entire game. There wasn't enough intention in most of what they were doing.
That showed up big time on the glass, and shows up like maybe not, I don't know, intention informs intensity to some degree. Mm-hmm. That was also, I don't know if you want to talk about that now, but they are losing that battle, man. They are losing that battle.
We can talk about it now because, I mean, to be honest, we'll get into what happened with Tyrese and Siakam as the two stars for this team in addition to the zone. But in my opinion, none of that really matters that much if you're going to give up 100 shots to the Cleveland Cavaliers while you only attempt 80. That was their biggest issue in this game, is that once again, the 50-50 balls looked like 80-20 balls. I don't fully understand what's going on there. And this is a case where, like, maybe there's certain things you can critique about coaching at times. Rick and the coaching staff can't put on a uniform and go get a rebound.
Mm-hmm. It's what I say on the other podcast: squeeze the orange, fellas. They go. Like what from a schematics point of view, I'll ask you, what do you think something is tilting this like unbelievably in the way of the Cavs? Is this an inherent advantage that will never cease to, threaten the Pacers in this series? Or is this really just like, sometimes you see the ball comes off the rim at like 45 degrees and the corner crash is just beating the lower man to the angle of the ball. And to me, like, that kind of stuff is inexcusable. But it's hard to look at something like that and be like, just go get it, fellas. But sometimes it is just go get it, fellas.
That's what it felt like in a lot of times in this particular game. I think that there was times where their first chance defense wasn't good enough, and then they put themselves in adverse positions on the glass. It wasn't so much a case of, it's kind of ironic, really, because the Cavs played 23 possessions of zone, and that should have made them more vulnerable on the glass. Yeah. Like, the Pacers should have probably had more offensive rebounding opportunities than they did, because they were shooting threes against the zone when a zone naturally creates holes. And yet that isn't really what happened. If the Pacers were blitzing Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland a bunch, that might have created gravitational waves that led to them being outnumbered on the glass, but that really wasn't happening either. I think, something that I might point out that showed up just defensive wise, it's not even necessarily a scheme thing, but that's just Miles not being quick enough to the ball, and that has to be better by Tyrese. Like, it's not really fun to shine a clip up there, but then sometimes it's transition defense. Mm-hmm. So in transition, when Thomas Bryant runs to the paint, he's got to bump Aaron Nesmith out of there. Like, Nesmith has to be spraying out to the perimeter. Thomas Bryant's back to protect the basket. Nobody goes. So now Max Strus is wide open after Tyrese got that deflection. Aaron Nesmith has a mismatch then because he was the player under the basket where Jarrett Allen's easily able to get it. And then Evan Mobley comes in because nobody was guarding him on the perimeter, because the initial first domino that went wrong is Thomas Bryant's under the basket. And as soon as the big is back, everyone else has to then push out to the perimeter. You always protect the basket first and you work out from there. That wasn't necessarily happening. And quite frankly, there's not a lot of urgency being shown there. Like, it seems like almost every series and every so many games, the Pacers have a game like this. It happens to them a lot in the first quarter. It doesn't always continue on through all four quarters, and yet seemingly it did.
I'll express some optimism before I think because I don't know how much analysis is necessary to be like, because everybody who watched this game, I know we come at it with like, here's the structure of what they're trying to do. And I know not everyone is seeing that or honestly has the time to go look for it. But some stuff is very evident when you're watching it. It's like, damn, they're just losing some battles that ought to be won. I don't know how much analysis you can have for that. But I will say, I think coming from outside market, I think that the Pacers have a good coaching staff. I think that there are solves that are sitting there that will be utilized. And I think also quicker decision making, better performances. It's all on the table for them. It's possible. This was a tough one, but like the Pacers played really bad.
I mean, and the one thing is that this coaching staff all year, when they've come and faced a problem, whether that's the 2-game mini series in San Antonio, and they're like, hey, the solve is we're going to pick Wemby up full
Yeah.
court, and that's going to alter what he's able to do as a trailer. Or, hey, we just got housed by the Milwaukee Bucks playing 19 possessions of zone. We're going to put in a new zone buster. Or we struggled a little bit and we're anticipating that the Bucks are going to play even more zone in the playoffs. We're going to put in another new zone buster. It's potentially possible that they'll sit here today and they'll look at this film and they'll either be like, hey, our execution out of the things that we were already doing wasn't good enough, or maybe we need to add and tweak a few things because this is a different zone than what we've seen. They've been very good at game-to-game adjustments throughout Rick's tenure here. So I don't have too many concerns about that. But I think that the number one thing that needs to be written on the whiteboard is the basketball is the most important part of basketball.
That's a good one.
It genuinely, that's what needs to be said and written in bold type. And I think it's something that they already talk about quite often. This is a team that has been known to do rebounding drills at practice, which is rather unheard of, where they're putting a lid on the rim and creating 3-on-2 situations where they have to go box guys out. It was something that was talked about a lot at the beginning of the season. And like I said, I'm not going to run a low light reel of offensive rebounds, but you could have. You very much could have. Like, you can't. The quality of the offense, especially when all 4 of the main guys for the Cavs are playing, and let alone are healthy in what they're doing, is too high quality to be giving up this amount of quantity. It's asking too much.
This team, something that the Pacers, I think, surprise other teams and fans of other teams or just analysts around the NBA. They can go pretty physical. And I know they're perceived as like this pace and space kind of like not that much physicality team. But the reason why they've had like better playoff runs than people expect from them is because they can ratchet up the physicality and they can definitely apply that pressure and they can play very gritty. And that was like over the last 2 games, I think, outside of the last dash effort to steal game 2, was noticeably not very present. This team can ratchet that up a lot. There's quite a few players on this roster who like rub some dirt on it, like the elbow grease and all that kind of stuff. It's there.
But Kenny Atkinson said that they were doing a lot of fouling and grabbing.
That's fine. That's fine, Kenneth. It doesn't matter to me. Let's play rough, fellas.
What did you make of the James Johnson appearance with 5 minutes left to go in the basketball game before Jarris and other people have played? What are you reading into that, Samson?
A forewarning to anyone. This guy, what is he, a black belt in jiu-jitsu? When he was with the Raptors, there was so much lore about like, if another guy screws around, James Johnson will beat them up. Like when he was like, also there was a season 2014-15 where everybody thought like just playing James Johnson more would solve everything. And he had this, he had like this the 3 Aaron Gordon hit last night to tie the game up. James Johnson had a game-winning 3 against the Spurs. I remember in that season, everyone's like, you played him late, he closed, and they won a game. I think he also had really great on-offs, but James Johnson lore lives deep in the recesses of my brain.
I mean, you probably don't know, but last year after Ballgate in Milwaukee,
oh yes,
James Johnson wasn't on the team yet. And while they had been in discussions with him to return and be back, the timing of that was absolutely hysterical, as if they were like signing him to beef up the security. That wasn't the reason why, but that from the outside is definitely
that's
what
funny.
It appeared like.
Yeah.
And then for the broadcast to be suggesting that, well, in the next game, maybe they need to consider playing him sooner. Like, my guy, like James Johnson's on the Udonis Haslem plan here. Like, this is a player coach there to be a veteran presence on the bench. That's about it. Maybe an intimidation factor from the bench. I don't know. But if you've reached a point in game 4 where you have to play James Johnson sooner, you have a lot bigger problems to deal with, quite frankly.
This is not like the Nicholas Batum fountain of youth. Like, oh, this guy is actually like the perfect fifth player on the court. This is James Johnson was out there, I think, just because it's he's mean mugging, you know. Yeah, I obviously didn't hear that because I usually don't have the audio on. I usually don't watch games with the audio, but yeah, the idea that like James Johnson is the salve, to me, insane. I don't think it would work out that way, to be honest.
Okay, so last topic of the, like I said, it was almost like the Pacers hit bingo on everything that caused them problems during the regular season. Like zone was a recurring issue, their rebounding at times was a recurring issue, and then obviously the talking point of whether Tyrese was aggressive enough or not aggressive enough, I guess I should put it. I kind of want to talk about both the stars for the Pacers. You and I went more in depth on Siakam's kind of odd game after game two. This a very odd game from Tyrese Haliburton. 2 points, or excuse me, 4 points, 2 of 8 shooting, 5 assists against 3 turnovers. Never attempted a shot against the zone. Your thoughts?
They and fair play. I'm not saying fouling because again, we don't do ref talk. But it was like the first play of the game. Tyrese comes uphill.
I have a
And
clip of this ready to
and
go.
and he's getting like basically like shoved across half court. Basically, it's like they knew what they wanted to do. And Tyrese, we've talked about it in the playoffs. He's done a tremendous job of responding to things and past weaknesses or current perceived weaknesses, all that kind of stuff. But the Cavs are like they're throwing haymakers. They want to punish him every inch of the court. And like you mentioned, how great the Nembhard Turner pick and roll has been by the stats, and that is largely a byproduct of just like Tyrese has all this big gravity, which doesn't relate to the zone, of course, but it's just like Tyrese has so much negative space in art, is how you described it. But the Cavs, they want to punish him, and it's game 3, middle of the playoffs. They put a licking on him, and it's definitely like it's affecting things. I hope it doesn't go on any longer, but in this game, I think it had an effect.
Yeah, so I there's a difference between Tyrese and Siakam's experiences in this series that I want to point out, and that was the first clip that I have to show about what we're going to show with what Tyrese is seeing. I am simpatico with you in that, yeah, Nembhard and Miles up through game 2. I don't know what the numbers say after last night because I didn't check in terms of what, OKC and Denver was doing. There was like 23 pick and roll combos that had played out of 50 ball screens, and the most efficient pick and roll duo was Andrew and Miles Turner. And that's not to take anything away from them because I think Andrew's made some really sublime passing reads in this series. But it's easier to make some blind passing reads when you're playing 4-on-4 and there's an entire help defender occupied at the logo. And the Pacers have had success with that throughout the season. However, there was a point in time in the regular season where it seemed like they felt like we want to free up Tyrese earlier in games, which I'll run through some of that. So the point that Samson's making there with the very first possession of the game, it's very clear they were going to have Max Strus do the same thing that Okoro was basically doing in the last game, which was try to keep the ball out of his hands and pick him up early as much as possible. They wanted to run him off this triple stagger, so he's going off the first side of it. When he gets to the second side, Darius Garland steps out to get him, and it's a two-hand shove. That's why he's off balance. Like, quite frankly, it just is. No ref talk, but that's the reality. And then he gets that switch. They're doing switch to shrink. And one thing is he took a number of shots in the first quarter. One of the things that I didn't necessarily like is when they were beating one of the bigs on the perimeter, they weren't doing anything to occupy the other big on the back line. So too often it was like, okay, well, he's gotten past Jarrett Allen and now he's just trying to hit some off-balance runner or floater over the top of Evan Mobley after everything that he's just seen on those types of possessions. Similarly, you can see him basically, running in parallel with Max Strus there. They used him as the shallow cutter, which was obviously an action that we talked about a lot with how the Bucks were using AJ Green. I didn't really understand, why do you have to go through the motions of this action? Darius Garland clearly limited on that toe. As soon as Tyrese makes the shallow cut, why isn't TJ just turning the ball downhill?
Yeah.
Why is this an automatic handoff where now it's more side-to-side action? And then look at Max Strus and Tyrese. You're going to have to do something.
This is why they brought James Johnson out. They want him to grapple with Max Strus and tire him out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're gonna have to do something to remove the top lock. Like, he can try to shove off and get the ball back, but look, you're at 9 seconds left on the clock when he's finally able to go do something, and now he's having to do it against the switch again. Which, and again, that's why you and I were also saying there's a reason why the first quarter of the game was effectively Miles Turner versus the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yep.
This is what the Cavs were willing to give up. And I credit Miles that he was converting on stuff early
Yep.
and that he was able to draw some really awkward fouls at times against guys. But that's why the offense was going in the direction that it was. They're trying to set three-quarter screens to get Max Strus off of him. Then the Pacers really don't like setting ball screens this high up the court in semi-transition because you're giving Jarrett Allen that entire runway on a long run ball screen to be calling out the coverage. And also when Tyrese has to pass out of the blitz at that distance, you're giving all of the other defenders time to recover. And then, like, to kind of bring Pascal Siakam into the conversation a little bit, like, he's being guarded by Evan Mobley and not in the way that Tyrese is being guarded by the various people who are face guarding him. At a certain point in time, they needed him to insert himself into the offense or for the Pacers to be calling more stuff, for him to be getting the ball to circumvent the stuff that's going on with Tyrese and the face guarding better than what was going on at the start of the game. There's another blitz where Tyrese made the wrong read when that needed to be the skip pass. And I say all this to bring up a point, and this is a possession that you and I showed you many months ago, and I was like, this is the most insane possession of basketball I have ever watched, because Wells for the Grizzlies was face guarding Tyrese this entire game, and they were using Tyrese to play 4-on-4 to the point where, look, in the camera, you can't even see Tyrese anymore. And despite the fact that Miles is being guarded by John Morant, pretty soon you can't see Miles anymore. And now it's 3-on-4, and Pascal, they give him the ball. He's able to draw the double. That manipulates the defense, and then watch Wells when Matherin gets the ball. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to go back to Tyrese. He has time to literally take a rhythm dribble, and he makes that shot. So there is some merits to why the Pacers have done that to the extent that they have, but the spacing needs to be optimized, and I think that Pascal Siakam needs to get a touch when that's being shown. That to me wasn't really happening readily. If it's not going to be that, then the next time they played the Grizzlies, they anticipated that Wells was going to guard Tyrese in the manner that he did, the same way they likely should have anticipated. Hey, we just watched an entire game of Okoro and Max Strus do this to Tyrese. They'll probably do that again in this game. And instead, they played out a delay and had Tyrese go set the slice screen. So it was a screen-the-screener action, and then Miles veering to get that face guard off of him so he can get a clean shot. That was the very first possession of the game, and he did not make it, but they wanted to be like, look, we're going to send a message that we have actions prepared where you're not just going to be able to hold on to him for 20 seconds of the shot clock. It's got to be one or the other for me. If it's going to be more 4-on-4 with Tyrese, that's fine. They've had success with that.
Yep.
But the spacing needs to be better, and your other star needs to start getting involved sooner in the basketball game. And if it's not going to be that, because for whatever reason you don't want to use Siakam in those ways, because it doesn't seem as though they have through the first 3 games, then it's got to be more specific actions designed to get the top lock off of Tyrese. Because I really don't think it can be these two having that performance and expecting that the Pacers are going to win a basketball game.
Yeah, as much as, and also like Nesmith, Colt Hero, fantastic. But if those other guys aren't creating, like if there isn't, tilted defenses to drive into, if there isn't like easier catch and shoot looks falling to him, his impact and effectiveness is going to go down too. Miles Turner had his quarter, but it didn't really last that long. And the Siakam thing is interesting because Siakam still scored 18 points in this game and basically did it all on like off-ball stuff.
Yep.
And the point you made about Mobley attacking space as an offensive rebounder because he wasn't being paid attention to, I think that's objectively something Pascal can do a better job of, especially against the zone. If he's not middle, it's like there's an opportunity here to go get it. That's definitely something he can do better. But also, and I'm from the outside talking here, and I've covered Siakam's game a lot, there's definitely things he can do better. Like the shot obviously has been a little bit, the last couple games, which matters, but he's a very talented decision maker and on-ball player, especially for his position and size. The team, to my eye, is not fully utilizing or leveraging his skills.
Yep.
And we were very critical of him last game. Like the podcast is very critical of Siakam, so much so that it doesn't happen often, but I saw comments that were like, it was like you went pretty long. The same critics, like the criticisms still land, but after a couple games of this, I think you can look at the Pacers and say you need a little bit more intention to involve him, especially since we've seen stretches where Pascal can take the offense when it's so hyper focused on Tyrese. And Pascal, one of his skills is to be able to like quarterback things ongoing, manipulate and drag defenders, even as good as like Mobley in different places, to draw a guard in so that the guards on the Pacers, who move pretty well and form up accordingly and run great actions out of second side against tilted defenses, like there's opportunity here that isn't being leveraged fully. And that's where I sit on it. There's certainly like Pascal, a 3 for 6 game from downtown would be really great. 4 for something like that, because he's going to have looks, and especially the way that the Cavs are even playing off of him a little bit. There's room for that, but there also just has to be intention in trying to utilize and leverage his outlier skills as a ball handling big.
Because it really, he didn't start getting like actively involved readily until the start of the fourth quarter. And the main reason why he did is because the Cavs, for some reason, were like reacting to Obi Toppin as though he was Joel Embiid on every post touch. Like 3 defenders sinking down, and then Siakam was like, I'm going to cut into this space. I'm going to get a wide open 3. Like other things started happening. I don't think it should require that.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be one or the other. Either you're using Tyrese's gravity and you're going to play a little bit more through Siakam around that, because in this game he's not being guarded by Dean Wade anymore. I could excuse it a little bit in game 2 because I'm like, okay, well, they don't want to use him as a screener because they don't want Dean Wade on the ball. This game, it didn't make quite as much sense to me, or in the reverse, then there needs to be more action. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is this is a team that loves to play random, but you might need to be starting to call some more sets for both of them. If they're not getting touches within the random flow of the offense, it might be time to start calling screen the screener plays for Tyrese. It might be time to start calling specific actions for Siakam to get them in more optimum.
It's been a long time since we saw like a huge glut of Pascal on ball Tyrese screening plays. It's at least to my mind, it's been a while.
The other thing, it doesn't bring me any joy to do this because Tyrese did have what I think was his best defensive game, maybe ever, in game 1. If he's going to be removed to this degree and only attempt, 8 shots, have 4 points, then they needed more from him at the other end of the floor too. Like early on, they're running, stack actions. The Pacers like to switch those between the guards. Donovan Mitchell's getting Tyrese. They were basically hunting that switch out of stack pretty early for Donovan Mitchell to get downhill. They're going to it again, only in more of a handoff situation. Miles then reacts, knowing that Tyrese got beat. Now it's a wide open, easy point blank that Jaren Allen happened to miss. But you can automatically see the difference as soon as Ben Shepherd came in and is picking up Darius Garland when they're going to the same stack between Shepherd and Nembhard, and how much better the water gets turned off when you're not trying to switch guard to guard with Tyrese anymore. And they're not going to not switch guard to guard because that would be contrary to what their coverage has been pretty much the whole year, to just be chasing over. There was stuff where it was pretty clear to me that they were just intentionally, while it wasn't like, hey, we're calling you up into action, it was pretty clear to me that they were targeting him because it's like, oh, let's go set a back screen so that you have to sag off, and then we're going to give Max Strus on-ball reps so that you're the on-ball defender. It's activating Nembhard as a tagger. It's a wide open 3. Third quarter comes, and then they're just running horns get, basically, for Max Strus to get downhill with his right, with Tyrese as the on-ball defender, and he's getting right to the rim. Like, again, if you're going to be playing with Tyrese on the perimeter as more of a side character as much as you were at the other end of the floor, then he can't be missing box outs. There needs to be a little bit more intention in rear view pursuit when he is the on-ball defender. It really wasn't great at either end of the floor, unfortunately for him.
Yep. It's been a huge playoff so far. Big letdown game. And you can't, I don't know. They have not operated at like the full capacity of both Pascal and Tyrese for it's maybe clipped for like 2 games in this playoff run so far. So just, yeah, the point you make about like random play versus, okay, let's really focus on how we utilize these guys, because these guys are the game breakers. These are the guys who will shift and change and manipulate the defense. I mean, the Cavs have no worries about just and Donovan Mitchell is obviously, one of the greatest playoff risers of his era. He's has an indomitable will, and he can do things that both like Pascal and Tyrese can't. But they have no qualms about 30 shots. They have no qualms about like turn them loose. They have nothing of the sort. And some of that is creativity on the coaching staff's part. It's not just like Donovan wants it more. It's like this is a team that has a top down, a bunch of brains that go into trying to utilize this. And I want to see Pascal take like minimum 12, like at least 12 shots every single game. I want like he should be scoring close to 20 plus every single game. Tyrese north of 15 shots so often. And if it's not going to be north of 15 for Tyrese, then it needs to be a lot for other guys. And it needs to be like dominant points per possession because you're playing 4-on-4. It's just needs to happen. But it's 2-1 still. And there's a game in Indiana on Sunday.
And that's the thing, not to harp on it, but they're going to see that zone again. And if they do, I can make an argument for Tyrese not having his highest shot volume every game. If you're going to get, Nembhard and Turner being the number one pick and roll combo, or you're going to be feeding more of the ball to Pascal, fine. There's no real gravitational benefit to Tyrese at the top of a 3-2, standing opposite from Evan Mobley and not attempting a single shot on 23 zone possessions from the Cleveland Cavaliers. He has to get shots. So a lot for them to reflect on in the next 24 hours before they get another chance to do this again. I would hope, and like I said, a big part of this is some of the things that we talked about honestly might not have mattered as much if, as I said, there was a reminder that the basketball is the most important part of basketball. Like, if you're not giving up a 20-shot margin, you put yourselves in a better position to win. So I still think that's the number one top priority, but the other stuff certainly does matter too. I guess I should ask you, because you've been the Pacers oracle. I think both of us kind of thought a loss was coming here. In fact, like I want to say that my prediction was pretty accurate, because I talked to other people during the day and they're like, "What do you think would happen?" I won't be surprised if they lose by 20, because I just thought that there would be enough adjustments and that I was expecting it. There's stuff that they can course correct here for sure when they look at the film. I don't expect all of this to be this bad. Again, and it wasn't this bad. Like last year when they had the bad rebounding game against the New York Knicks in Game 5, they came back in Game 6, and guess what? Pascal Siakam was a central focus of that game because he needed to be, because of what the defense was dictating to them. So I expect them to be better prepared, but this was not a good showing. This is not what you want in a home playoff game when you're coming in with a 2-0 lead. This was a prime opportunity, because I don't think that players are going to get guys who are sitting out for them. I only expect to get more healthy as the series goes, not less healthy.
Yeah. I also think like the Evan Mobley clip that went around where it looked like he was like super hobbled when he was trailing Pascal Siakam, I don't think that was actually like an accurate portrait. I think he just had to shuffle his feet so he didn't run into Pascal. Like, I don't think it was like, oh my God, like he can't possibly move. Mobley, I think, is probably close to just Mobley is there. He's Evan Mobley. He's Defensive Player of the Year. Garland can uptick, I think, a fair amount. And however, still, Blake asked me yesterday, like, I was like, I think it'll be 3-1 for Indiana leaving. And that's still like, the Cavs are really good. It could be 2-2 very easily. And even if it goes 3-1, that's still a really tough team to close out. It's not, this is the, like, in my mind, this is an ostensibly harder series than the Knicks series last year that they squeaked out of after stealing 6 and 7. Like, this Cavs team is really good. It's really important they stole 2, but they have to be, even going up 2-0, they have to be in really great form to get out of this series. So, all the questions are in the air. They get to go answer some of them on the court, with which the medium is basketball. So grab that thing, get after it.
Well, hopefully this was entertaining for people to listen to, or at the very least cathartic. Maybe you gained some insight on what was going on with that Wiley zone.
Catharsis.
I wish we could have had, our discussions that could have strayed into happier topics that people have enjoyed listening to, but it is what it is. We're no longer the front running podcast. We didn't do an episode after they lost the last time. We hadn't gone through this yet. We had to regroup also.
Yeah.
In our game plan here.
every day via YouTube comments, otherwise Twitter, someone is calling me a Hufflepuff. That might forever known as one.
The goal, the way you get that undone is to stop being kind. If you start being mean, I think it will reverse it. I don't think people will have those thoughts anymore. So you just need to start saying mean things about me on the podcast, and then maybe you'll get billed as a Slytherin or whatever else might be better fitting of you.
So
don't be loyal. Start
so
freelancing elsewhere.
There was so Blake's friend Jonah also came over and he asked, like, how long have you been a Pacers fan? I said, oh, I'm not a Pacers fan. I just I do freelance work for Caitlin Cooper out in Indiana. And he was like, oh, who's like Caitlin Cooper? And Blake and I sat there, and you'll like this or hate this. Maybe it's glib and trite. I was like, I think the best basketball analyst like in the world. And Blake, he froze his brow. He's like, I think comfortably. And the guy was like, oh, cool. and immediately he was like, dude, do people want to hire her? And I was like, oh yeah, dude, everyone wants to hire her. I want to hire her. It was just like how you're talked about in rooms you're not in. I'm not fighting the Hufflepuff thing anymore. I've simply embraced it.
I think that you should embrace it because, like I said, when I read the traits, I think that you should feel good. That my initial thought was, I actually think this does fit Samson pretty well. Yeah, anytime somebody thinks that you're kind and that it fits you, I think that's nothing but complimentary.
Yeah,
notice that nobody thought this about me.
Oh, whatever. I think now this might be. Would you rather be known as intelligent or kind?
Kind.
Wait, as your leading trait. Both can exist, but as your leading trait.
I mean, I guess in the sense that, and this is not me being arrogant at all, and what I'm about to say, I want to make this clear because this isn't something that I think of myself, but in the sense that anyone can be kind. I'm not sure that everyone can be hyper intelligent.
So what's your answer?
But like, if I'm dying and people are talking about me, I would rather be known that I was a kind person. I would rather my legacy be kindness than intelligence.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be, wouldn't I be a lot more likely to have people actually there mourning the loss of me if I was a kind person versus just like a hyper intelligent person? I think.
Well, they're not mutually exclusive. It's just like the leading.
But let's pretend as though they are.
No, I won't play your games. So the funny thing is, this is only my reputation in this market. In the Raptors market, I don't think I have the Hufflepuff reputation. I think this.
I think they do because it's. I mean, I haven't been over there in a while. I've been blackballed from the Raptors coverage, but when I would always find it really humorous because two things I would notice in the live chats when I was over there about you. Number one is that people would think that you weren't being harsh enough. You weren't critical enough of the players that you were talking about. And number two is that if anytime you would say something, they'd be like, Samson said a swear. Like, have you ever talked to this person?
No, most of them haven't talked to me.
I think that they do probably think you have Hufflepuff vibes because those are the two things that I most often see pointed out.
Interesting.
If they had a critique, I should say. Most of the time it's them saying that they think that you're good at your job, as you are. But like if there was ever a critique, it would more so be that like you weren't critical enough. Similar to me, I get told that I'm like, despite what we just did for this entire podcast, I'm sure somebody will be like, you'll never put blame on Tyrese. Like somebody will say that. Like maybe not in these comments, but somewhere people will think it. Like it doesn't matter that I've shown all of these things that could have gone better and that he could perhaps do better while also offering the context of what the Cleveland Cavaliers were doing. I've been too apologetic of him.
This guy sucks.
Yeah. Not worth the contract.
What is he? Is he signed a max contract? I assume.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just
Is
gonna
this
clip that. I'm
is
just gonna
this
clip
is
that phrase of us. Just that. You
is this
saying this guy sucks to be saying he's not worth the contract.
is this his first year of the max contract?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, whatever. How many players in the NBA have a max contract right now? Like 33?
You think I'm keeping track of these types of things, Samson?
Well,
I can let you know I am not. I don't spend a lot of time counting the money and the dollars of the NBA
you
players.
don't go look it up on geniussports.com or whatever the hell?
Genius Sports isn't keeping track of money. They're not keeping track of production percent.
Spotrack, Spot Rack. Spotrack, Sports Track, Spotrack,
See,
Spot
this is
Rack.
another Sport Trader, Sport Radar, which it definitely was Sport Radar. I just can't read. That's definitely what it was. When I looked that up after the fact, I'm like, why did I think that was that? That's not what that word says.
Maybe you thought it was like like an agricultural company, like a spore trader.
I don't know what I thought. It
So,
was poor form. I'm gonna lose my Ravenclaw status with not being able to read a word.
do you wanna hear a funny story about agricultural products? So, when I
When I
was
woke up this morning, I thought to myself, I hope Samson tells a funny story about agricultural products.
okay, so there's a product called Roundup, and basically farmers use it for their crops. Are you aware of this?
And buy it commercially and use it on weeds as well.
There you go. So that's right. There was at the Sturgis Bonspiel. A Bonspiel is
It's a
basically
German word.
for tournament, basically, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, that's what curling tournaments are called, Bonspiels. And so
Interesting.
so in the small town I grew up in, there was this Sturgis Bonspiel. It happened once a year. And curling, there's a draw to the button competition, which whoever of all the people who enter, whoever throws the rock and gets its closest to the button wins. I won that competition 2 years in a row, and it wasn't just kids. It was adults as well. And that was like, because I didn't have an allowance. I didn't grow up wealthy or upper. I didn't just, it just, that was how I made money, was winning the, the draw to the button 2 years in a row.
Like every
However,
time I talk to you, I'm learning about a new way that you as a kid made money too.
yes. And so we had the draw to the button, and the one year, the draw to the button prize was like $75 or something. It's hardly like for me, it was everything. But looking back, I'm like, that's not a lot of money. However, that you could also get, there was like a bunch of Roundup. And I was like, I think I should take the money because I don't know what I would do with this box of Roundup. But then a farmer was like, I'd buy that off you for $120. So I took the Roundup, sold it to a farmer, and then I made $120 instead of 75. I was like, let's go. Thank you, Dave Bobish. Spelled Babby R's. Yep.
This is like the most small town story I've heard. If I thought
Yeah.
long enough, I could probably come up with one, but I think you might have finally out small towned me, which is very hard to do. Did I tell you about the story of when I drove home and that they had put up a four-way stop? Like they didn't put a traffic light, but something that was never a four-way stop became a four-way stop. And I got there and I stopped because I was on the side where the stop sign always was. But I saw a semi pull out in front of a grain hauler. And like my life flashed before my eyes. I thought that they were going to get creamed head on, not realizing that this four-way stop was a thing. Changed my life, truthfully.
How often were combines driving through town? Like
All the time.
constantly? Yeah.
There's a field in my sister's backyard. That's where I took the picture
Nice.
for the agrarian economy of bucket shirt. It was fitting.
Speaking of, it's beautiful outside. I'm ready to go get some sun.
Talking about the field talk again.
Oh, field talk.
I feel like it should be called a meadow still. If there's not crops growing in it, it's not a field.
Wait, is that true? Is that do you think that's what it means? Or is this your
My
own
initial
thing?
connotation, like just hearing you say field, I just assumed you were going to go sit where crops were growing.
I'm going to look this up. Field. Now, there are, of course, different meanings. However, number one, on Google Dictionary, an area of open land, especially one planted with crops or pasture, typically
Right.
bounded by hedges or fences. Now,
I know the bucolic terms.
I'm going to look up meadow meaning, and we'll see if that's a little bit. A piece of grassland, especially one used for hay. Now, there's no hay over there, but
Might be.
I think you think I just a piece of it. I think it's probably closer to meadow than
Someone
field.
might have dropped a piece of hay.
It's possible. So I think I'm actually going to honor the fact that you were right about the field thing, or at least mostly correct. I think I'm going to start calling it a meadow.
Did you read
And
any
also,
good, did you
go
read
ahead.
any good books in the meadow?
I read so many good books in that goddamn meadow. You wouldn't believe the amount of good books I've read over there. It also seems a little bit more quaint when I call it a meadow. Like I'll be out in the meadow.
It feels more idyllic, I would
Like
say.
if that was called a meadow, you would think I don't live in an area of the city rife with crime.
How is Rexdale
Oh,
these days?
oh, I have a story. I tweeted this story. It was by the meadow, but
Oh, we
there's
need to talk about this story because I don't think you understand something. But continue, tell it if it's what I think it's going to be.
so I know, firstly, fleas don't really matter because they're not actually going to like bed down on humans, right? Like dog fleas are for dogs. Like fleas can bite you, but they're not going to find home. Ticks though. Anyway, there was this kid, this is a big afro, just this little kid running around chasing this mid-sized white dog around and his traffic. And I was like, this seems wrong to me. So I asked the kid, I was like, is that your dog? Do you need help getting your dog? He's like, yeah. So we chased this dog around for like 20 minutes. We eventually get him into like a half between somebody's house where there's a house on one side, a house on the other, and a fence. And it's like, okay, he's cornered. This guy grabbed the dog. Like I take like 5 minutes wrestling it into its leash because it is a makeshift leash. Like it's not a good leash. I can see why the dog got off the leash and wrestle it on. I say, and I go, here you go, kid. Give the leash back. He's like, okay, thank you. I don't like grabbing because of all the ticks and fleas on her. And I was like, okay,
Oh,
no problem, buddy. And then I went to go climb. And then I played catch with Blake Murphy. Oh, wait, no, that was a different day. I climbed 2
you
days in a
threw
row.
fleas to him on the ball. I just think it's funny that this child's like, the child never touches its own dog. Like,
He
what's
has
the
a big
point of having
afro.
this dog?
Maybe he doesn't want. He's like, no, a tick will go in there. I don't know. He and I were on opposite spectrums of hair. His big, boisterous, mine not present. He's a cute kid though, and the dog's name was Reese.
I
Also, I felt
recently,
itchy the rest of the day, even though I knew there
I
was
can
nothing on me.
imagine.
I was
It's
like,
hard to not think about it. It's really
yeah,
hard not to think about it. It's kind of like when you think you might have a mouse in your house, and then every sound you hear, you're like, it's the mouse. Like
oh, the
it's the
skittering.
mouse. Yes,
Wait, how?
everything.
So when I was growing up, there was like a couple different eras of like we gotta find this damn mouse.
hmm
Did you have mouse in the house?
I indeed did once. It was during my freshman year of college, and everything that could go wrong was going wrong in a 24-hour period. So it was terrible, freezing ice storm. So like on my windshield was like this much ice, and my professor, my bioanthropology professor, was very like, if you're late, the door's getting shut, you don't get in. And I had a 45-minute commute. So I was like, I don't have a choice. I went and got hot water and threw it on the windshield to get the ice off. And it cracked the windshield straight across. And I was like, well, I don't have anything I can do. I must carry on. I must drive the 45 miles. So I get all the way up there. I get home, and then two of my family members get like the 24-hour gastrointestinal type sick in my house. Like, this is great. Like, I have finals coming up. My windshield is cracked. And then lo and behold, something is in the corner of my eye that I see run across the ground. I'm like,
Hmm.
my life is over. Like, the mouse has to own the house now. We can't both live in the same space. Like, I can't do it. But it had come in behind the dryer. There was like a hole around the dryer vent, and that is how it got in. It
The
took a
heat.
long time, and I was just like in my room, like putting towels underneath like the edge of where like the carpet and the door works. I'm like, everything at night, like the whole night, I had all of the blankets, the dust ruffle up on the bed. Like, what if it gets up here? What if it's in the bed?
So I have never, not since I was a kid, because our house had mice in it a couple times before the age of like 12 and then never after, I don't think. We'd find like they'd maybe get into the bread and you'd be like, damn it, we need new bread. We got the damn mice got into the bread. However, when I was living in Mexico, one place there was a bat that, because it was like the windows didn't have glass because it's so hot in Mexico. It was just like shutters. I woke up in the middle of the night and it was just like, and it came through the shutter and just landed on the ground right beside my bed. And I was like, wait a moment. And then so I had a girlfriend at the time, and I was like, I woke her up. I was like, hey, just leave the room. Like, because I didn't want to freak out. Like, just like, leave the room, please. And then so she left the room, and then I used my flashlight to, like, I went back in. I used my flashlight, and I was like, it's a bat. God, like, damn it, there's a bat in my
A
room.
flying mouse.
Yes, a flying mouse. And then so what I did was I, under the cover of darkness, got scurried over there and put a pot lid on it. And then I used the pot lid to hold it there. And then I scurried a garbage bag under it and then got in the garbage bag and closed the garbage bag. And then I went, because we lived on the third floor, and released it. And then it dropped out of the air and then flew off into the night. And I was just like, oh.
It
But
was
the worst
kind.
one,
It was kind again that you just let it out of the bag and it
now
got to carry on living its
less
life.
less kind. There was a tarantula in the other place. I could not. I told this story on a podcast I did with Blake many years ago. I could not abide the tarantula, and I felt really bad. However,
You
we did
one
come
of
to
you had to
blows.
go. One of you
We
had
did
to go.
we did come to blows because Poe as well. Like, I was like, I can't have a tarantula. Oh, and the crabs. Oh my God, the crabs. I don't know
I
if you
remember
remember.
I saw that video. We barely knew each
Eh,
other at the time.
dun,
And as I told you,
dun, dun,
after the
dun.
fact, I literally thought this was like, I didn't think you really lived in Mexico. Like, when I saw this video, I thought it was like an elaborate bit. I
I
didn't think
do
that was a
love
real
bits.
video.
I do love bits. That's like I told everyone in Toronto, because everybody knew me, but nobody had met me. So I told everybody I was like 5'5", so that when I showed up, I'd seem huge. It was pretty funny. I'm like, hey, what's up? They're like, what the hell? We thought you were so short. Like, you could literally probably go
That's the
through.
first thing they thought? Like, you're shorter than we imagined?
No, I'm way bigger than they imagined, because
Yes, you're bigger than we imagined.
yeah, of course, because like people started making short jokes about me. Like, because it was like people were like, you're short. I was like, yeah, but they didn't know I'm not actually short. So it's like, don't you think that's so funny? Somebody expects you to be like 5'5", and you show up and you're like just shy of 6 feet tall. You're going to seem like a mountain of a man, and they're going to be like, they have to completely reconfigure their idea of
I don't
you.
think I would be giving it that much thought. Like, I also don't think I have that great of an eye for height. So like, if you live up to your promise of coming to Indiana someday, if this occurs, and we see each other, I think I'll just think, oh, Samson. Like, I don't think I'll
Well,
be imagining a height.
if that's because you don't like, if I was imagine if you thought I was 5'4" and I show up and I'm not, and it's like a half a foot difference. That's funny to me. Anyway, also the cockroaches. The cockroach was the most intense battle I ever had. It was like, fighting cockroaches
I
it
have
feels worse than
a
anything.
mouse/bat story. Are you pro zoo or anti zoo? Do you
I
like
think
the zoo?
so. I'll say this. I've loved when I've gone to zoos in my life. Loved.
Mm-hmm.
However, growing up, I think like there's an ethical thing here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I'm like, well, damn, something I loved as a kid. I saw a
It's
giraffe.
like
Do you
a
want
guilty
another giraffe?
pleasure because I really enjoy the zoo, but then when I'm there, sometimes I feel kind of bad that I'm there. But however, I was at the zoo and there is a rainforest, like a rainforest dome at one of the zoos that I was at. And you're in there and they let birds and bats fly around freely inside this. Like it's supposed to create like a rainforest
Wait,
environment.
bats fly freely?
Yes. Yes, there's some at the very top. I don't know if there's like netting that would prevent them from getting places, but the birds definitely do. And I'm not a huge fan of like just the free range animals in the same space as me. But but where I'm walking along with the person that I'm with, I look down at the path and I'm like, why are there these little random bowls of like pellet food? Like this is strange.
Oh,
And then you see mice. And the mice were the food for the bats. So there's just mice loose in the rainforest
this is in
dome.
Indiana?
It's in the Midwest. It's
You
in the
guys are
Midwest.
crazy.
It's in the Midwest. So
I guess you're from the land, not necessarily, but your proximity to like the Tiger King situation. America, I'm sorry, I know this is, I assume, predominantly American listeners. You guys have crazy things happening in your
okay, so like
countries
there's
a lot.
mice running loose in this rainforest dome. And so from then on, anytime I went to the zoo, I'm like, I can't go in there again. Like that the mice have won. Like that's their area. I can't
Hmm.
go back. So
Yeah.
I couldn't think about them running over my foot or like anything like that. And so this is my problem at zoos because like I like animals. I like to look at them, but like I can't go in the reptile building either. It's too
Mm.
bothersome for me. Like I have like a visceral reaction when I see it. I'm like, can't look at a lizard. I don't want to look at a frog that's like this big.
I think reptiles are cool. I'm not like have a
Mhm.
reptile as a pet guy. I think, but the reptile house is usually what they're called, or the
No, I
reptile,
have to
whatever.
skip the reptile house, or I'd have to like hold on to the person's arm in order to get
Mm.
through it. I'm there
I'm
for the
in
heavy
there.
hitters. I'm there for the bears. I like the bears. I like the elephants, the rhino. Like, oh, and the Cincinnati.
Rhinos are so cool.
Yes, and the Cincinnati Zoo has a hippo, Samson. A
Wow.
hippo.
Rhinos, it's like they're wearing armor.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. But yeah, in the reptile, I'm like this. I'm at the glass. Look, I'm like, whoa, this guy's a cool guy. That's how I am at the reptile house.
I can't do it. Then I'll just start having dreams about them. Like that night, I'm gonna have a dream about a snake or a lizard doing something. I had a recurring dream where a person would put a lizard on my shoulder
Was he
and they
friendly,
would not
lizard?
take it off. No, it tormented me. Like they would put it there and its tail would be there.
Did its presence torment you, or was it a tormenting lizard?
The presence, the idea of it.
Then it
It was
could be
like
a nice
it was a
lizard.
recurring dream anytime I was sensing stress, I was guaranteed to have the lizard dream.
Oh
Somebody
man,
was going to put it on my shoulder.
my stress dream: losing my teeth.
I
My
don't
teeth.
think you have a stress dream
I
because
have a stress
I
dream.
don't believe that you've been stressed.
That's see this just speaks to, this is like that's why being
But
short
this is
form.
why it's good for us to do
That's
this
why.
together because I don't think that you sense stress in a good way.
Wow. Have you seen the movie Free Solo with Alex Honnold?
No.
Basically, he's the guy who climbed up. He had basically has accomplished the greatest climbing feat in humanity. He climbed up the El Capitan free rider route without a rope. He climbed up almost a kilometer of mountain, just rock face without a rope. Anyway, they found when they studied his brain that like his brain just really doesn't register fear. And you're suggesting that my brain doesn't register stress. I don't know if you understand the implications of that would mean I'm a sociopath.
No, I think it's more so that like anytime I've talked to you about things, you're always like, and even when it has been stressful things that you're dealing with, you're just always like, I'm not going to think about that until it's actually happened. Like I'm not going to devote brain space to something that hasn't occurred. Like I'll worry about it when it
That's
happens.
like anxiety.
And I'm a type of person who like I'll think about it a lot while it's happening and being like, what if that happens? That's what I meant.
Yeah, I try and remain present. And I don't try and like let the future worry me too much because it's like there's so many things to worry about, you know? There's like I do worry about things. I don't communicate them. Like I don't usually lean on or talk to people when I'm stressed about things. I usually just like let the
This is
storm
an
rage
important
on.
realization. You don't talk to people about things.
I let the storm rage on in my mind, and then I hope that my my brain spits out a solve for it. Anyway,
But you have a stress dream, so what's the stress dream?
my teeth falling out. I
Oh,
lose my
okay. I
teeth.
feel like that's a common one though. I feel
I
like
think so
they
too
would
because
tell you that like your teeth crumbling out of your mouth is like a common
yeah. I googled it and
stress
there
dream.
was this whole, but I didn't believe any of it. I was like, okay, this just means that people are having this dream. But I think like I don't know if it's my stress dream. It certainly stresses me out when I have it. I'm like, you know, I'm trying to. Oh, my teeth. Oh my god. Yeah.
I
I
wonder what the
thought
Pacers stress dream will be leading into game 4.
I don't know.
Hopefully they don't have one. Hopefully they're more like you and they're just like, not going to worry about that till it happens.
Well, no, you got to be more preemptive, I think. Cuz like in my life, I don't think there's anybody like plotting on me trying to bring me down, so I don't have to be preemptive about stuff. The Cavs are trying to bring them down. They're plotting on them. They like you sit the throne. You like palace intrigue is something they have to consider.
Do you think
Me?
that it's possible that the stress dream is like a giant game of whack-a-mole only for rebounding?
Yes. Certainly. Something like that. Yeah. I we got like 40 minutes of banter here almost. I
That's
didn't think
true.
we'd have any because we're front runners, so we wouldn't have the demeanor
We
to
had to bring up
to
the
joke and
mood.
laugh,
We had
to
to bring
goof
up
and
the
gab.
mood. After people listened to me be critical for however many minutes, we needed to bring up the mood. And of
Yeah.
course, I rule with an iron fist, so I always have the ability that I can just edit the last 40 minutes out.
You are authoritarian. That's what everyone needs to know.
You think I'm an authoritarian boss?
Oh yeah, big time.
In what way?
Anytime I step a toe out of line, she gives me the fifth degree. Is
That
that
is that is so opposite of the truth. When both of us were sick for 2 months and like I didn't know whether you even wanted to keep doing this with me, I never even contacted you.
Yeah,
I never
Caitlin,
said a word. I said, have fun on your ski trip. That was the only word I said. Feel better. Eat honey. That is what I said.
Caitlin is a very hands-off boss. Yes, it's true. It is kind of funny to think of you as my boss, though. I don't think of you as my boss, actually.
My sister doesn't either. In fact, she told me to stop saying it.
Yeah.
I asked her this question in one of our podcasts, though, on the very first popsicle trip we took. I was like, please let the people know what type of boss I am. And she was like, please stop calling yourself a boss. And then she's like, I think it's pretty similar, which you watched this video, I think, but she's like, I think it's pretty similar. Our relationship's pretty similar to Roy and Walt Disney. And for like 2 seconds, I got really afraid about what that was going to turn into.
Yeah.
But then she was like, no, because you have a lot of ideas, like as in I come up with ideas and she implements them, which is pretty accurate of what our relationship is. I'm not a doer. I have no idea how to do the things, but I come up with ideas and I'll be like, hey, you think you could do this? Like, I got this t-shirt in mind. I got this photo shoot thing I want to do. Like, you think you could replicate the GQ photo if we got this, this, and this? And then she figures out a way to do it. But that's been what we've been doing since we're kids. But she also agrees that I need to stop calling myself a boss, which I think is pretty accurate.
Yeah. It's the same thing. I don't think I could be a boss. I feel very uncomfortable giving people directives. Like I would hate to compel someone to do something. I'd be like,
Yeah.
damn. I'd be like, you don't have to though. Like, no way. And
That's what I
obviously,
always say.
well, and I know that very well because however many months you're like, hey, listen, it's so chill, dude. It's the chillest, coolest thing. Podcast?
She did like it though when I named her employee of the month every month. She's not going to get named
She
at this
beat
month.
me?
I mean, I've been awarding it in the mailbags. I'm surprised you haven't seen. She was employee of the month every month, but she's not getting it this month. Spoiler. She's not getting it this month because she went
Wait.
on a vacation.
Am I getting it then?
Man, don't want to reveal it. Don't want to give anything away, but
Let's go.
Stuff might be happening. People might be getting moved off the board.
It would be really funny if you found a way to like award it to somebody else. Like I was like, damn. It's like I just can't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. The employee of the month is the person who's left the most comments on the YouTube video.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, we really do need to stop the podcast now, especially because the Pacers are going to play another basketball game in less than 24 hours that we're going to have to find stuff to talk about, which hopefully won't be a retread of anything we talked about today. I'm really hopeful for that. But Samson, cue the goodbye phrase.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate you very much. And if you have the means, follow a link that I presume is in the bio of this video to Caitlin's Patreon to support the work that she does, and by proxy, a little bit of me as well. She is the best basketball writer in the world. That is my contention with anybody who might levy other names at me. Wrong. Incredibly so. And I'm sowing dissent towards other writers for every house that I visit where we preach the gospel of Caitlin Cooper, best writer. Anyway, long-winded. Like, comment, subscribe. It helps us be the biggest. We're the biggest podcast, Pacers podcast. We rule supreme. We were coming for the title, and we're happy about it. And we're very thankful to listeners. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.